Every empire believes its money is safe. Every government claims its promises will last forever. And every time history steps in and proves them wrong. From Rome to France, from the American Confederacy to modern-day Lebanon, people have woken up one morning only to discover that everything they spent their lives saving had suddenly become worthless. Their salaries lost meaning. Their plans for the future collapsed overnight. The system they trusted was never as solid as they believed. Collapse is not a rare event. Throughout history, these kinds of breakdowns have happened again and again. The real question is this: what will you do when the system collapses? Most of us look at our bank accounts and feel a sense of comfort, not because we're rich, but simply because the number is there. It feels safe. But money is not concrete. Money is trust, and trust can disappear overnight. That's why history is both brutal and incredibly instructive, because every collapse leaves behind traces, lessons, warnings that whisper, "Pay attention next time." And if you do pay attention, you begin to notice something interesting. The survivors were not the ones who trusted the system the most. They were the ones who questioned it first. Take Byzantium. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Byzantium managed to survive for another 1,000 years. At the center of its economy was the gold solidus. It was so trusted that merchants from Europe to the Middle East accepted it without hesitation. It was almost like the reserve currency of the medieval world. But here's the irony. The Romans before them had already made a terrible mistake with the silver denarius. Emperors had gradually reduced its silver content, turning it into little more than plated metal. The result was disaster. And centuries later, Byzantium made the same mistake again. This time with gold. They reduced the purity, mixed cheaper metals into the coin. At first nobody noticed, but once trust cracked, it was already too late. The solidus was no longer money. It had become a political claim. And when a currency loses trust, it loses everything. So who survived? Those who held real gold. Those who owned land beyond the empire's reach. Those who protected real value. The first lesson is clear. Governments rarely resist the temptation to dilute money. And when they do, value escapes into things that cannot be easily copied. But not every collapse begins with government mistakes. Sometimes an external shock changes everything. In the 14th century, the Black Death swept across Europe. Half the population died, cities emptied, fields were left unworked. Yet economically, the story was more complex, because when people became scarce, labor became valuable. Survivors demanded higher wages. Land was plentiful, but buyers were few. Those who had liquidity, those who held silver, or those who could still produce something, suddenly had an advantage. They bought land cheaply, moved into abandoned homes. Sound familiar? Think about the COVID era. Supply chains froze, governments printed trillions, asset prices surged. Those who owned houses and stocks became richer. Those living paycheck to paycheck became more fragile. Pandemics redistribute wealth. They always have. Crises reward those with reserves and punish those without them. Now let's travel to Renaissance Florence. While a financial center of Europe, gigantic banking houses like Bardi and Peruzzi dominated the economy. They lent money to kings. They seemed too big to fail. Then England's King Edward III defaulted on his debts. The banks collapsed. Deposits vanished. Trade froze. The lesson? Being big does not mean being safe. Reputation is not insurance. The same lesson repeated centuries later in 2008. Institutions once considered untouchable disappeared overnight. During the American Civil War, both sides printed money. The North issued greenbacks, the South printed graybacks. In the Confederacy, inflation spiraled out of control. Prices rose thousands of percent. Wages became worthless. In the end, Confederate money died. What held value? Land, food, gold, real things. During the French Revolution, the same story appeared again. The government issued paper money called assignats. At first there was hope, then overprinting began. The currency collapsed. Farmers refused paper and demanded silver. Bread riots returned. In the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Thailand's baht collapsed. Countries with dollar-denominated debt suddenly faced disaster. Currencies plunged. Unemployment surged. If your debt is in someone else's currency, your risk doubles. And then there is Lebanon. In 2019, people woke up and went to the bank. The doors were closed, accounts were frozen. You couldn't withdraw your money. The Lebanese lira lost more than 90% of its value. A lifetime of savings vanished. Understand this clearly. The money in your bank account is not sitting in a vault. It is a loan you gave to an institution. And in a crisis, that loan may never come back. If all of this feels distant, remember. In 2008, people lost their homes. In 2020, governments printed trillions. In 2023, several U.S. banks collapsed after losing trust. The story is always the same. The system is strong until the day it isn't. So what is the solution? History does not offer a single formula, but it does reveal a pattern. Not blind trust, but real value. In Byzantium, gold. After the Black Death, liquidity. In Florence, skepticism toward banks. During the Civil War, tangible assets. In revolutionary France, food and land. In Asia, avoiding foreign currency debt. In Lebanon, diversifying before banks closed. Collapse is both tragedy and opportunity. For the unprepared, it is destruction. For the prepared, it is redistribution. But wealth is not only what you own, it is what you can do. Can you bake bread? Can you repair something? Can you produce real value? In a crisis, money can lose meaning, but production never does. People will always eat, build, trade, live. And someone who can create value rarely stays poor for long. Every crisis is a transfer, from the trusting to the prepared, from paper to reality, from passive savers to active producers. History has shown this again and again. So the real question is not, will everything fall apart? It will. The real question is, when it happens, will you be holding a promise or something real? History may not repeat itself perfectly, but if you ignore it, it will crush you all the same. History has the answers, and together, we'll learn where to find them. If this gave you a new perspective, consider subscribing.